I was at my desk enjoying a mid-morning coffee that my assistant brought me, though she used artificial sugar. I told her I'd switch to black tea instead. I was thinking about a copyright issue that needed immediate resolution, but the federal government was delaying the release of sensitive material. They were slow as usual, making it hard to get anything done. Federal employees showed extreme incompetence, avoiding responsibility without direct orders. I wondered how many people handled a letter before action was taken. I was stuck, unable to move on to my next project. If we had to destroy the items, there'd be a financial loss. The rise of liberal concerns had made simple matters more complicated, even changing job titles. I felt too old for this nonsense. "There was a young lady here to see you," Jackie Stodd said, entering my office. She wouldn't give her name, but she handed me this picture. I looked at the photo and felt a rush of dread. It was a picture of me and my ex-wife, Sharon, taken on our wedding day 18 years ago. It made me think about the pain, heartache and tears that people assumed I was still feeling after we divorced. In fact, I didn't understand money or I had changed since. I asked her if she was Susan or Sandra. I said, "Ask her if she's Susan or Sandra. If she is, show her the video on this. If she wants a copy, give her everything and return the original to me. Come back afterwards and I'll answer your questions at 4:20. I embraced the situation. After my short marriage to Sharon Grace McCormick, I was no longer the trusting person I once was. I had to earn people's trust, which was difficult. I was 6 feet 4 inches with a 38-inch waist and weighed 200 pounds. I exercised at the gym for 2 hours after work. My brownish-black hair was graying slightly, but I still turned heads. I had a few casual "I'm not really into relationships," and marriage and love aren't really my thing. About an hour later, Jackie came back, leaving the door open. She said the young lady still had a lot of questions, so she sat down. She looked serious, like she wasn't going to leave without answers. She was looking at me with her emerald eyes, waiting for. I asked Sandra if she knew which one it was. She replied, "Who is she and why was she so shocked?" She was crying and said, "We've been lied to all our lives." She added, "If my heart's right, he was lied to as well." Sandra is one of a pair of identical twins. The clip you saw was her mother's last words to me before our. I found out about the twins at the first divorce hearing, 7 months before they were born. I wasn't informed that she was pregnant. The rest of the items on the stick detail what would happen if I contacted them. Her father is with the CIA and got me fired from the FBI with false charges because he hated me. The documents imply there's a contract on my life if I interfere with them. He was a powerful, dangerous man. She divorced me to marry my former best friend, with whom she'd been having an affair for months. As far as I know, he's their natural father. How did she find me, and what does she want? She found an old photo in their attic with your name on it. She Googled you and recognized you. She also found the original marriage certificate and divorce papers. She tracked you down through Facebook and other web searches. She came to find a bone marrow match for her twin sister, who is running out of time. Why come to me? I'm not their father. It doesn't make sense. I replied, her mother was with her father months before I knew her. Her father ensured that Sandra suspected something and convinced doctors to run a DNA test during the bone marrow test. Mr. Press isn't their biological father. Jackie's expression changed to a big smile as tears formed in my eyes. If Sandra was right, it meant my ex had lied to me all those years ago. I wondered if I might be their father. I knew she was related to you the moment I saw her, Jackie said, standing up. She has a look. That makes it pretty clear. Are you ready for perhaps the biggest shock in years? Jack, send the information on the stick to my publishers. Tell them to release it in a way that can't be traced back to me. And don't disclose my writing name because my life might still be at risk. Make sure they know that. I need to get this out there ASAP. Find me someone to do a DNA test and set up an appointment. If I'm their father, I want proof. When I confront their mother, I'll need a litigation lawyer to fight for my parental rights. Clear my schedule. I need to go to Susan's hospital ASAP. I said, now. I need to find Sandra. Sandra, come in and introduce yourself. Jackie called Sandra, who walked in, and the moment I saw her I knew she looked just like my younger sister at 16. I was choked up, overwhelmed with emotion. Sandra and I both started crying. Jackie took a few pictures with her phone to capture this life-changing moment. Then it was time for a change of pace. Sandra and I had an appointment for blood testing at 1. They said it would be quick, so I charged it to the corporate card. Jackie said she'd also arranged for us to meet our sister, Barbara, at Cells at 3 and reserved a private table. Sandra needs to see what we do, and Barbara will make sure her kids are taken care of. Sandra said she understood that I have some important family news. I was a bit emotional and unsure, so I just stood there watching her walk towards me. I had so many questions, but I hugged her tightly anyway, and Jackie closed the door behind us. It was hard to grasp that I might be a dad. Sandra seemed to feel the same way as we left my office. We tried to keep things simple and take it one step at a time. Once we'd arranged for the clinic to email the report, we headed out for a late lunch. I learned that Sandra had skipped school and driven all day until she had to rest at a station. I was pretty mad that she would do something so risky, but I held my tongue, realizing I might be reacting like an overprotective dad. It also reminded me of something I would have done at her age. When we arrived at CEL's, I noticed Barb's car. I know we're here to meet your sister, but why did Jackie set this up without talking to you first? Sandra asked. You're about to see what Jackie and I saw when we first met you. I replied that it will explain why we believe you and Susan are my daughters and why I was shocked when the test came back. Sandra asked, can I call you Dad? I laughed and said, I'd love that. Cells was a family restaurant, a step up from Red Lobster with an excellent reputation. The owner and hostess led us to our private booth immediately. I ordered a bottle of champagne and extra tissues. Barbara had her back to us, so I asked Sandra to wait while I approached her sister. Thanks, I said. For meeting me. Barbara looked up and said, you look happy. What's going on? Barbara, stand up. There's someone I want you to meet. Warm smiles, Paul said. Oh my God, Barb. You should have warned me, she replied. This is unbelievable. How long have you known about her? About 5 hours, Sandra said, her voice emotional. I surprised him at his office, Jackie explained. Dad knew immediately, seeing you. I understand why the server returned with tissues and why we needed privacy. 3, Barbara said between tears. More people joined us, so the hostess moved us to a larger table. Barbara called her husband to join us and told our parents to come quickly, saying it was a family emergency. Mom asked what was wrong, but Barbara said she couldn't explain. We were all emotional. I got a text from Jackie saying the publisher had released the information and it would be on the 6th. We'd just finished our first glass of champagne when Barb's husband and my parents arrived. I laughed, hearing my dad's loud voice. There better be a good reason for this. Barbara and I stood to greet them. Mom, Dad, Lou, I'd like to introduce you to Sharon's daughter, Sandra. Press, Barbara said proudly. My mother instantly recognized the resemblance and smiled widely, filled with pride. She finally had the granddaughter. My dad was always keen to meet her. He was speechless for once when he finally spoke. He said, I see it, but it's hard to believe. My mom sat beside Sandra, holding her hand tightly. She was too emotional to speak. My dad ordered 2 more bottles of champagne. He was clearly proud. After our glasses were refilled, I stood up with mine. I said, I need to explain. I started recording with my phone. I shared how we met and what had happened. On that day, my dad then stood up and said to Sandra, we don't need a DNA test to confirm what we already know. Welcome to our family. You have 2 more aunts to meet soon. Promise us you'll always consider this family your home. Sandra took the phone and spoke. "I came here seeking the truth, not knowing what I'd find. Today has changed everything for Dad and me. We didn't know until now that meeting Aunt Barb showed me what unconditional love is. My twin. I knew my sister Susan would feel the same." I scanned the table as everyone became emotional. Even my father, who never cried, had tears in his eyes. My mom held up 2 fingers, crying louder. I captured everyone's joyful tears before stopping the recording. Sandra added her and her sister's info to my contacts and texted Susan, showing me the video she sent. Sandra's message read, "If what we think is true, the DNA test will confirm. Watch the 6 o'clock news. Love your twin." My mother asked if she was still in disbelief. Sandra showed her photos of Susan and herself. My mom demanded copies for her laptop, displaying them on the full screen for all to see. Sandra then turned off her phone and put it back in her purse, making me realize no one knew where she was. My phone rang. It was Susan. I stood up and walked away to answer it. My dad noticed me tearing up and looked at me questioningly. Sandra mouthed, "It's my sister." My dad nodded, understanding, and I answered the call. "Hello, this is Susan. I had to call because I won't be home until at least 7 o'clock. I'm going to the police station to get an update on Sandra. I'm pretending I don't know anything. The police were here earlier and left their card. Any ideas on what I should do? Should I get him to watch the 6 o'clock news and pay attention to what's revealed about me? Tell him you'll talk when your parents aren't around and show him the video. Give him my number and ask him to text first before calling. He'll understand after watching the news." I replied, "Once we have the DNA proof. Sandra and I might bring the whole family." "What do you mean?" Susan asked after explaining Sandra's actions. "To help you. The family will spread the word. I don't know how many will come, but those who can will." I explained why she asked family. The Patterson family are very close. If I'm not a match, someone else might be. Susan said, "I don't think so. You'll see." I replied with a laugh, "We're not that close, after all. We only talked a little before saying goodbye." She replied, "I'm so relieved." I told the family why Sandra was there. My mother took charge of organizing everything. "Sandra, how did you get here?" "You get here," my father said. I drove my old 1994 Voyager van, which is one step up from a rent-a-wreck. She laughed and said, "It's in Dad's parking lot. Take that van to my dealership in the morning." She's not driving back in that. It's a miracle she made it here, my dad. She said firmly that at her age, you had as much sense as she did. She's determined. "What do you plan to give her?" I asked. He replied with a wink and a smile. "If I could choose, it would be a 4x4. I love the outdoors," Sandra said. My dad responded with, he was grinning from ear to ear because we all love the outdoors. If the weather was good, we were fishing, camping or hunting. He started reminiscing about the summer I learned to water ski and barefoot, sharing as many stories as he could. Both my parents insisted that Sandra stay with them for the night, agreeing it wouldn't look right for us to be alone after dinner. Dad drove them to her vehicle and then drove it home. My mother was thrilled, already planning to spoil her new granddaughter. Dad ended up waiting until 1 o'clock a.m. They should be home around 10 p.m. The police investigator gave me a call. It took him 2 hours to run a background check on me. The media was asking questions about the information I'd released. We talked about the situation and the problems we were facing. Seeing the 3 generations in the video had answered many of his questions. I told him we were rushing DNA tests to confirm our relationship. Once we'd confirmed that Sandra was with my parents, we decided to go back to see if I could be a match for Susan. I asked him to buy us some time and promised to update him on our progress. Susan later told me that he'd reported back to her about our discussion. I was confronting my past again, but with a new perspective. This time, I wasn't going to be intimidated by my ex. I would use the media, the courts and the truth to my advantage. I had the resources, the proof and a growing determination. I didn't seek revenge, just justice through the truth. The next morning, I was in my office, ensuring my schedule. The changes wouldn't affect me much, and I set up tasks for Jackie while I was away. Jackie kept checking the email accounts like an overprotective mother, questioning me about my day and extracting all the details she could. To be honest, I never tired of looking at Jackie Stoddard in her youth. She must have been every teenage boy's dream. Her naturally styled brown hair suited her soft features, and her piercing emerald green eyes and full lips were still captivating. As a single man, I often admired her, but was thankful she never caught me looking. Finally, she received the DNA test results and exclaimed, "It's confirmed, you are her father, Jack." I got in touch with the lab right away to send the info to Susan's specialist and started looking for the toughest litigation lawyer in New York. After checking out a few, she picked the best and set up a Skype chat. The lawyer agreed to work on a percentage basis, confident it was a sure thing with the DNA proof. We'd go after my ex. I also took legal action against my wife, her husband and her parents for denying me my parental rights. I wanted to prove that the restrictive court order against me was the result of their deliberate actions, and that the supposed contract on my life was a way of trying to intimidate and control me. Even before involving the government, the lawyer saw the potential for a significant case. I asked Jackie to send a gray dust-covered box from the safe to my new lawyer. It contained legal proof that Sharon's father had tried to destroy my career and marriage. It had taken years to collect this evidence through various government levels. I later learned that the police officer had released the video, turning the story into a runaway daughter finding her biological dad to save her sister, which caused a media frenzy. "Mom, it's confirmed." I said on the phone that I'm a father twice over, thank God, and I'm ready to leave tomorrow at 7. I'll be up at 7 a.m. I'll let you know what happens at the car lot. Have you called your daughter's mom? We're now on the road, driving a fully loaded 2-year-old. We set off in an old Ford Explorer to Igo, New York. Sandra and I were leading the way in a tour bus with my parents, and 33 other vehicles were following. The tribe was on its way when my phone rang. Sandra answered and put it on speaker. "You're being tracked by CNN," she said. Sandra replied, "Dad said if it was confirmed, a lot of family would come, but I never expected this." Susan explained, "It's given me a new hope. I never imagined I could feel this good." Dad's family spread the word, and people came out of the woodwork. I met so many relatives this morning. I'll need multiple introductions to remember their names. I met first, second, and even third cousins. I'm so proud. I want to change my last name too. Sandra Carlson said, "I had no idea families like this existed. I was so overwhelmed I almost went off the road." That's when I decided to write about this amazing experience in my next book. Her daughters were still talking about Sandra's experiences when Susan said she had to go. Her mother had just entered the room. "Dad, are you okay?" Sandra asked with concern. "I saw you get very emotional. How do you expect me to feel? I discovered I have 2 daughters, raised by my ex. My wife and I had a friend who was like a family member. One is very lively and full of life, while the other is on the verge of dying. One is so strong and independent that she moved mountains without thinking, just like I would. She wants to take my name." I replied with pride, feeling overwhelmed. Sandra replied that I was so focused on saving my sister's life that I didn't think about the impact on you. I wasn't a good match because I inherited Jean, your dad's sister. I know I've caused a lot of emotional problems, but I hope you can forgive me. I've come into your life and turned everything upside down. But that's what living is about, right? You've given everyone another person to love, and you've given me a chance to be a real dad. I'm so proud of you. Your grandparents adore you, and your mom is so proud of you too. Seeing her face in you means everything. You and your sister have a great relationship. She's been spoiling us since birth. We went shopping and if she bought me an F, she got one for Sue too." She laughed, saying she had years of spoiling to catch up on. "That's Mom. You'll find it impossible to distance her from you. I know I've tried. I said, Barb and my sisters will brag about this for weeks. By the end, this will become a family legend shared for years. We learned that as soon as Sharon saw the live news feed about our arrival, she began having severe panic attacks. When she saw the live news feed about our arrival, she started having severe panic attacks. The walls she had built were crumbling. Susan, who felt vibrant and strong, confronted her as soon as she turned off her phone. "Mom, why did you hide the truth about our real dad?" she asked. When she got no answer, she pressed harder. "You hid the truth from us. You made decisions about our lives. What gave you the right to play God? Even Dad didn't. If Sandra hadn't found out about him and sought the truth, would you have let me die?" Sharon had no answers. She never expected the truth to come out. Her father had hated Paul from the start and did everything to drive him away. Thankfully, Susan's doctor walked in at that moment. We received DNA from a man we didn't know. This proved he is Susan's biological father. He is coming to be tested. There's a good chance he is. He should be here tomorrow afternoon. The doctor said he'd be under guard for his protection. Susan said, "My biodad is coming with 140 others in case he isn't a match. He wants to give me a fighting chance. You had to know we look like our real dad's mother. Watch this video. It proves everything." Sharon watched the video of my family meeting Sandra. There was no doubt 3 generations shared the same face. She could no longer deny the truth. Her daughters had proof, and her husband's actions were backfiring. Then a man appeared at Susan's room entrance. He was asking for Sharon. When she admitted she was Sharon, he pressed. He handed her a large legal envelope and said, "You have been served." Sharon fell to her knees and started crying. Susan was furious and asked, "Mom, why did Grandpa put a contract on my biodad's life?" Paul was suing Sandra and Arnold for conspiring to ruin his marriage and career. He was demanding sole custody of his daughters. He argued that if Sandra hadn't found him, he would never have known about them. He claimed moral abandonment, suggesting that Arnold and Sharon would have let Susan die to keep their secrets. It would be difficult to prove otherwise in court, given the media coverage. Arnold recalled that when he and Paul were university roommates and football teammates, they both had a thing for Sharon. In the end, Paul won her over. Arnold was even the best man at their wedding. However, Sharon's father never approved of Paul because of his background. He convinced Arnold to pursue Sharon, and Arnold agreed with her father's influence. Paul was kept busy with FBI assignments, leaving Sharon and Arnold alone. Eventually, Sharon and Arnold became lovers while Paul was undercover for 2 months. Her father had recorded their affair and confronted Paul with the evidence when he returned. Unaware that she was pregnant, Sharon thought her missed periods were due to stress. Delighted her father saw Paul file for divorce immediately, she was surprised when the twins were born. They knew Paul was the father, but her father had already got Paul was fired on false charges. It took him 4 years to clear his name, during which time he left the area in disgrace. Meanwhile, Sharon and Arnold married and had 2 sons. The unedited tapes would prove that Sharon's father and Arnold were working together to break up the marriage. Arnold now wondered how Sharon would react when this truth came out. Sandra and the group arrived at our final stop of the night around 9. After 14 hours on the road, we ordered a light meal to our rooms and went to bed, ready for another early start at 5 a.m. I gave Sandra a wake-up call and left early because I had a secret meeting with the police officer and an FBI representative. The rest of the group left at 7 for the 6-hour drive. Sandra dropped me off at the IGGO Police Department where I met Detective Peter Rogers and FBI Agent Chad Garrido. We discussed my former father-in-law. The police questioned me for over an hour and a half. I gave them my lawyer's contact details and left a USB stick with all my evidence. I was put under official protection until I left town with a security escort. I was taken to the hospital for a blood test to see if I could be a bone marrow match. As I approached Susan's room, I heard Sandra and Susan talking. The hospital staff recognized me by I wrote my name and signed a book for one of the nurses. I walked into Susan's room. Sandra said in surprise, "I didn't expect you so soon." "This is our dad, Paul Carlson." Susan looked frail. Her skin was loose, and her face reflected the closeness of the end of life. Despite this, her smile was wide, and her eyes were bright with hope. "They're rushing the test. It should be done in 30 minutes. The family is checking into their hotels. My parents are having their bone marrow drawn now and will meet you soon if there's more than one match. The doctor plans to do a double transplant simultaneously in both arms," I said, trying to keep my emotions in check. Susan broke down in tears. I sat on the edge of her bed and held her until she calmed down. Sandra captured a photo of us both crying tears of joy. I could see she was feeling really proud, and I realized just how much she'd done. I was really moved seeing my two daughters together for the first time. My grandma and grandpa came in and met my sister. Sandra said we chatted for over an hour until Susan's doctor came in. My mom and I were a match for Susan. Dr. Proctor asked if we were ready to be checked in for surgery at 6. It's midnight. The next day, we both agreed. My dad said, "Thank God we prayed for a miracle all the way up." "Don't you need my parents' permission?" Susan asked. "Normally, yes, but we received a court order this morning, thanks to Mr. Carlson. It allows us to proceed if he or a relative is a match. The judge agreed that your mother and her husband weren't putting your needs first. Dr. Proctor told us that Mr. Carlson would cover all costs not covered by insurance." Sandra smiled. "I'm not surprised," she said. "Mama and Arnold did the same thing. Dad had no choice. Legally, he had no rights, so he used the courts to prevent any delay. Then a security guard told us we were about to be on national news." Susan turned the TV to CNN, which revealed my identity as the Sandra. Susan and the doctor were amazed to see that my parents looked at me in shock, thinking I was just an independent corporate financial advisor. "My godfather," Susan said, "I've read all your books and they're great." I laughed after my former life was destroyed. I had to reinvent myself, and writing was my first book was a success, and it led to more. I keep my books current, sharing the raw truth about world situations, societal views, and morals, whether people like it or not. For the first time in 15 years, I checked into a hospital along with my mom. My new daughter wanted to share a room with me, but the hospital security wouldn't allow it. Sandra spent the evening running between 3 different rooms. My dad called some relatives to update them. Sharon and Arnold weren't pleased when they arrived after work. They were met with coldness. Susan told them she was being prepped for surgery and would receive a double bone marrow transplant in the morning due to a court order. I asked my mom, "Arnold, my biological dad and his mother are perfect matches, and Susan, who is my biological sister. Both are donating so I can get a double dose and recover fully." Susan said, "Mom, do you know who Jason Blackstone is? He's your favorite author." "Well, Jason Blackstone is a pen name for Paul Earl Carlson, my biological dad." Sharon and Arnold turned pale. They had hoped the case would disappear, but Paul's net worth showed he wasn't after money. He wanted justice. Paul always believed in law and order, which made him a successful agent until his termination. "Mom, did you know your father has been in FBI custody all day? You might want to check with Grandma to see if he's home. Can you explain why this is happening? Sandra and I want to know." Sandra is somewhere in the hospital, either in Dad's room or Grandma Patterson's. If you want to see her, just ask. Sandra and I were in my hospital room discussing how she would handle her mother when Sharon found her. A security guard knocked and poked his head in. "Mr. Carlson, do you know what happened?" I said. Jackie stared. I said. He opened the door and Jackie came in. Jackie was my right-hand woman for 10 years. I supported her through her divorce after her husband got his assistant pregnant. She was now 35 and a single mother, still adjusting to single life, but still wore her wedding ring. My family and I loved her, and I often wondered why she hadn't found someone. "What are you doing here?" I asked. "I'm here to do what I always do. After Dr. Proctor said you'd be here for at least 3 days and thought you were a match, your arm will take a week to heal enough for light activities. I booked a private jet and a hotel using the corporate card. Jackie explained that Sandra texted me, saying, "Dad, FYI, she loves you." She couldn't stay away. I raised my eyebrow. The guard poked his head in. Sharon and Arnold pressed, "I'd like to see you. Would you mind if I asked them to be searched first?" Jackie said, "What's your relationship with Mr. Carlson?" The security officer asked, "I miss my fiancé." "Didn't you see my ring?" Jackie replied. Sandra winked at me and mouthed, "Told you dot." I laughed as Sharon and Arnold entered. Sandra spoke, "Dad. I wouldn't trust these two for a moment. They're just trying to cover their backs. You don't know the half of it, Sandra." Jackie, "Your dad's lawyer has video showing your stepfather receiving a check from your grandfather as payment to break your parents' marriage. If successful, he would manage your grandparents' finances for a 3% annual fee." "How do you know this is true?" Sharon asked. "Who are you, Mom?" She added. "Jackie Stoddard is my dad's fiancée and a master researcher." "I trust her more than you," Sandra said firmly. Sharon's face went white. Her daughters were distancing themselves from her and there was nothing she could do. "Jackie speaks the truth, Sharon." I explained that I ordered my lawyer to release all the video and audio tapes to the FBI, including a letter from your father admitted he paid for the recordings. He hated me so much that he didn't care about the cost or who he used to get what he wanted. "Is this true?" Sharon asked. Arnold, seeing her expression, knew it was Sharon. He realized what he'd lost when she divorced him. The only man who truly loved her was Jackie. A word of advice: don't let others manipulate you. You know, I felt the same way Paul did. I want to talk to you alone after the surgery. I need to go home and think things over. Sandra, will you walk with me to my car? Sharon asked. Sandra said, "I'll be back soon. Mom and I need to settle a few things. Jackie, watch over Dad until I return." We watched them leave. Sharon held it together until she exited, then started to cry. Both Jackie and I realized she had no idea what had happened until now. Arnold was born with a silver spoon and was paralyzed by fear. The truth had come out and their life was shattered. Sharon would never trust him again. "Paul, I dreaded this day. I thought you'd never return if we had met accidentally. I could have brushed it off." Arnold said, "I never saw this happening. It's best I leave and say no more." He left, leaving us alone. I looked at Jackie, making her blush for the first time. I was looking at her the way a man in love should. This was a new experience for me. I was opening myself up. Was she playing me? Was she finally admitting her true feelings? Did I love her as a friend or something more? Either way, my daughters had awakened me. I'd been living in others' shadows, finding joy in their excitement instead. We have a lot to talk about while I'm on leave. These last few days have made me realize that I got a bit complacent, settling for the sidelines instead of being in the game. Paul, when I got divorced, you stepped in. My kids were still young, and you've been more of a dad to them than their own father. From baseball games to father-daughter dances, you were always there. I know why you pay me well more than the usual rate. You want to make sure the kids in your heart are taken care of. On their birthdays, you always went the extra mile, making them the envy of their friends during summer breaks. You took us on special trips, creating lifelong memories. You answer their questions like a father should. They love you, and you love them. Your only problem is your fear of commitment. I tried to speak but couldn't. Jackie was right and her words hit me hard, so did Sandra's. I walked over to Jackie and sat beside her, taking her hand. I looked into her eyes, gathering my thoughts. Sharon cheated me. Her father's power intimidated me. My best friend betrayed me. I lived with an ongoing threat on my life. I put myself on the defensive until a few days ago. A few days ago, I didn't realize it, but now that I have, Can we go on our first actual date, or is it too late for you and me? I asked. Took you long enough, you old fool, Jackie said before kissing me. I'm texting our kids to tell them we're now a couple and working things out. I'm pretty sure of myself, I said. I texted Sandra thanking her and asking if everything was okay, I said. Sandra responded, Mom didn't know. She's taken it badly. She won't be back tonight. Let Susan know. Jackie and I went up to Susan's room after introducing Jackie as my girlfriend. We told her what had happened earlier and showed her Sandra's text. We'd just finished when my sister Barbara entered. I just had to meet her. Barbara said, Jackie, what are you doing here? I want to say something, but Barb figured it out. He's finally clued in, hasn't he? She said with a smile. Susan, this is your Aunt Barbara, and the man you don't know yet is your Uncle Lou, Barbara's husband. You'll learn to speak your mind, one way or another, I said. I excused myself and went to the nurse's station, texting Sandra to ask about Susan's pizza preferences. She replied that Susan likes everything but anchovies, so I ordered 3 extra. I ordered a large pizza and 3 2L colas for quick delivery. I also called Dad to ask him to bring Mom up in 30 minutes for a pizza party. We pushed the no eating for 8 hours rule, but got carried away. The head nurse came in to calm us down, but left with a slice of pizza. Later, she stopped me and said my actions lifted the spirits of the whole floor. I can't thank you enough. Midnight M. They took me and my mom to prepare for the operation. We supported each other until we were wheeled in. I stayed awake until the medication kicked in. When I woke up, it was done. Now came the waiting and praying. Dr. Proctor informed everyone that the bone marrow transfer went well, but it would take a few hours to see if it took. Hearing this, most of the family started preparing to go home. Jackie, I said, is the worst. I replied, you're like a bull in a china shop, impatient, unruly and miserable. Keep it up and you'll get a bad reputation. Jackie told me, my mother was doing well once she was sure I was stable. She gave me my phone back. The first texts I saw were from Jackie's kids. They were both asking when she gets her engagement ring. Dad, when do we meet our new sisters? Jackie, your kids are smart. I gave her the phone and told them I was going to ASCO to watch over you after the operation. They had a lot of questions, and they told me the whole story. They weren't surprised. They said, Mom, he's always treated us like his own. They said most of their friends wish their dads were like him. They said they've always seen him as their dad. Jackie explained that she read the note and looked at me with tears in her eyes. I guess we'll have a short engagement. I said, with a smile. Have you heard from the twins? Sandra and her mother are with Susan. She's doing well, considering everything. Even though she's still medicated, she's asking a lot of questions. Jackie told Sandra about the pizza party. Susan can't get over how much she looks like her aunt and grandmother. She can't wait for a girls' day out with them when she recovers. Find me my pants. I want to see her myself, and then check on her. I told the nurses it was too soon after surgery, but I insisted, so we went ahead and did it, holding hands. I was surprised at how manageable my pain was. Jackie and I noticed Susan's improvement immediately. Her complexion was better, and the sparkle in her eyes almost brought tears to mine. Who are Tammy and Timothy Stoddard? Sandra asked my children, ages 13 and 11, why? Jackie replied, I got a Facebook friend request from them. This morning, Susan did too. Sandra said you both need to read what they sent me. I said, handing Sandra my phone, read it, smile, and pass it to Susan. I want this back so I can add their phone numbers to my contacts. I said. Sharon then asked if she could talk to me privately, so we went to the waiting room. Paul, I had a long talk with my mother last night. She admitted remembering Dad's hate towards you but never expected this. The girls want to finish school, then live with you. They want their last name to be yours, and they feel that what Arnold and I did is unforgivable. Sharon told me that I can't argue with them. They've made it clear that they'll go to court if I refuse. They no longer trust me, and I can't blame them. Will you let them come? You know my family. They wouldn't let me refuse, no matter how I felt. I will gladly take them, and so will Jackie. We'll just need a bigger place. I'll drop the suit against you if you agree to joint custody. I replied that the suit will still go forward against the rest of your family. The twins are old enough to decide the rest. Sharon agreed to joint custody. I offered to pay for their name change, but she declined. We walked back into Susan's room together. The girls watched us intently. Jackie, it looks like we're going to need at least a 6, I said, bedroom. Jackie smiled, and the girls screamed with delight. Sharon said, girls, your father and I agree, you get your wishes. If Jackie agrees, I'll call the lawyer tomorrow to start the legal process for your name change. Paul, Jackie asked, are you ready for this? A house with teenage kids. No one is ever ready, but we adapt. I'm just getting used to the idea of 2 carrying my name. I said, make that 4. Tam and Tim want you to adopt them. They're already signing their names as Carlson. Give Roger at Mauser's a call to get the ball rolling on the paperwork, then send the kids a text to let them know what's going on. Let's find out which area has the best schools so we know where to look for our new home. Sandra picked up her phone, opened her contacts and made a call. Hello? Tammy said. Who is this? And what do you want? This is Sandra, your soon-to-be older sister. Is Timothy with you? Sandra explained. Can you prove it because I can't? Proof? Seriously, are you scamming me? Tammy, Paul and I are getting married. Jackie said you were talking to Paul's daughter. Sandra, we're all going to be Carlson. Susan and I are changing our last name and your dad and I have started the process for him to adopt you and change your name to Carlson too. Sandra added, sweet. Let Dad know it's about time. How is Susan? Timothy replied, we've been waiting to hear. Jackie and I exchanged a look, witnessing the first conversation of our blended family. She squeezed my hand in support. I'm making progress. So far, so good. I'll text you both so you can add my number. Susan and Sandra, our dad is the only father we've known. Our biological dad was gone before we knew him. Your dad has been better than any of our friends' parents. Your mom's been in love with him for a long time. When we get together, we need you to accept that we're all siblings. Nothing more, nothing less. Tammy and I won't let anything come between them. Timothy said firmly. Both of my daughters agreed. Jackie, with tears in her eyes, said. Their eyes showed they were displaying your morals and standards, and you should be proud they took your values to heart. I said goodbye for now and went to see my mom. My dad was with her when we walked in, which took them by surprise. My dad saw a look from Jackie that made him smile, he knew. Something's up, Mom. You're up and about already. Have you seen Susan? How does she look? Her complexion is improving, and her spirits are up, so it's looking good, but it's still too early to tell. We need to have a serious talk. If you both have the time, we're not going anywhere. So let's get to it. My dad responded, Susan and Sandra will live with me after the school year. They'll change their last name to ours. I said, Sharon agreed to joint custody and the name change. It was the twins' idea, which is wonderful. Both my parents said that's not all. Jackie added, your son is great, too. Elizabeth, are you ready to help plan a wedding? My mom got teary-eyed and my dad had a big smile. They didn't have to say they were approved, we knew they would be. I will be adopting Tammy and Timothy, and they will take my last name. Jackie and I will start house hunting as soon as we get back. I added, what got your head out of your back? My dad asked, we all? I know how you both feel about each other. I've been trying to get your mother's approval to give you a bit of a talking to, Earl Carlson. You're not at the yard selling a car, are you? Mom said, Jackie, have you thought about your wedding plans? We haven't discussed it much, but since we're blending 3 families, it should be a family affair. Barb can be my maid of honor. Paul's best man is his brother. And Susan and Sandra will be ushers, Tammy the flower girl and Timothy the ring bearer. Dad, will you walk me down the aisle? Jackie asked with a grin. It depends on who's paying and if the 19th hole is stocked with Jack Daniels. Dad replied, laughing. What do you think, Paul? It's perfect. It will unite us all. If that's what you want, let me do it. I replied, should we invite Sharon? Both my parents firmly said no. Mom, Dad, in the next few weeks, the media will reveal a lot. I'm suing the federal government. Sharon's parents and her husband. I believe Sharon was as much a sufferer as I was. I paid the price years ago, and now Sharon is paying in ways we can only imagine. She thinks she's lost her daughter forever. I explained, inviting. I think it would help the twins to start afresh and move on from the past. Jackie and my parents looked at me in amazement, asking where I'd found such wisdom. My dad asked seriously, these last few days have taught me a lot. I replied, holding Jackie's hand. Sandra's arrival helped me to grasp life again. We returned to my room and I quickly fell asleep, exhausted from the surgery. Jackie stayed with me. I was kept informed by my lawyer, Christopher McCormick, and Arnold Press had been arrested for lying to the FBI. The person behind the contract on my life turned state's evidence. My lawyer released details of my firing from the FBI, prompting an internal review. When I woke up, Jackie filled me in. Dr. Proctor informed us that my mother and I would be released the next day. You'll need to follow up. He said that the stitches would be coming out soon. Susan is doing better than expected, but we're not sure how she'll respond as she's weaned off her meds. We spoke to my parents, who decided not to leave the city until Susan was on the road to recovery. They would fly back with us on the private plane. My dad is staying at the same hotel as Jackie, and the bus driver has been instructed to head back over the next few days. The media exposed the deception, backstabbing, and political deals that ruined my marriage and career. They spent a day discussing how Sharon's father manipulated her into believing the rumors and lies. Dissected Sharon like a frog. Jackie and I were heading to visit Susan one last time before going home. Dr. Proctor had said she was on the road to a full recovery. Someone must have disliked the negative press about the Fed's past dealings with me because the security release my publisher and I were waiting for was granted. Over 1 million hard copies would be released to the market within 2 weeks. I had 2 first editions delivered overnight after I signed them. Jackie wrapped them and we hid them. We put it in a shopping bag so Sandra would know to be there when we got to Susan's room. Your dad and I have set the wedding date for the first weekend in August. Aunt Barbara will be my maid of honor. Would you two like to be my bridesmaids? Jackie asked. Susan said, hell yes. Jackie, when I first walked into my dad's office, I was pretty shaken up. You recognized me right away and said, Sharon's daughter, how are we going to handle this? I was really surprised. You accepted me from day one, so I'm proud to say that I'll be in your wedding party if you'll allow me to call you Mom. I watched. As the 3 of them hugged, it was great to see Susan literally jump out of bed when things settled down. I pulled out the gifts and gave them each a signed first edition of my book with a message to one of the 2 prettiest ladies who call me Dad with love, Jason Blackstone. Or Paul Earl Carlson. Susan was over the moon when she opened it. It was my biggest book yet, over 600 pages. She was so proud, knowing it wasn't released yet. She opened the cover, saw my note and then lost it. Dad, you've already done so much. I didn't need this, she sobbed. Before you came into my life, I was told I only had a few days left. Sandra knew this too. I'm not sure why she went into the attic, but I'm glad she did because it brought us you. She hugged me tightly, and Sandra watched us for a few seconds. Dr. Proctor thinks that if Susan had only had 1 transplant, it wouldn't have worked. The double transplant shocked her body into responding, and in the last 6 days she's gained 10 pounds. Sandra said, I didn't know if you would come, but you didn't hesitate. You brought a tribe. Thanks to the family, I'm getting my best friend back. "How's your mom holding up?" I asked, trying to change the tone. "She's filed for divorce and is going to therapy to deal with a lifetime of lies. She now understands what you went through and is ashamed." Susan said that only someone who has experienced it can understand that it's a living hell. Her work and friends are her support. Mom is strong and will get through it. The key will be getting her to trust again. Right now, she doesn't know who or what to believe. Sandra, even with family support, it can take years to regain. Trust is something I had to work on. For me, it was Sandra walking through my office door. I was so happy to see her. Paul had me convinced I'd die an old maid waiting for him. Jackie added with humor, "Now girls, stand by your father so I can capture a few photos. The best one will be an 8x10 for his desk." When we stepped off the plane, we were surprised by Jackie's parents and children, who were there to greet us. The kids were so excited, and it spread to all of us. My dad enjoyed hearing them call me Dad. I realized Timothy would have 2 older sisters. Tammy had a sister and a younger sister, just like me. She gave my mom a hug and said, "I'm glad you're becoming my grandmother." I thought about how quickly my life was changing with unexpected blessings. Jackie and I decided to put our pre-Sandra plans on hold until after the wedding. Jackie knew what we needed, so I let her handle finding a new home. This gave me time to write my first fiction book. My previous works exposed corruption and cover-ups. We stayed in touch with the twins and Jackie found a 20-acre property with a barn that needed repair. Susan was improving and returned to school part-time. We had a firm design for our house with steel and brick, including an outdoor kitchen, a large patio, a pool and a 4-bay garage. Jackie's reduced office time meant I could work harder with an editor from my publisher helping me. I wrote over 300 pages and published my first book under my real name, Sharon. I used my lawyer to divorce Arnold, securing alimony and education costs. My cases were in mediation as they lost the will to fight. Tammy, Timothy, Jackie, and I awaited the twins. After their last day at school, Timothy saw them driving up our new driveway. We all went outside to greet them as they stepped out of the Explorer. I was so impressed with how well Susan was doing that I couldn't tell her from Sandra. Jackie whispered that we'd figure it out. Timothy, playing big brother, carried their luggage as Jackie showed off the house in my office. There were 3 copies of my latest book on my desk. It was a fictionalized story of us.